that the effect of epistemology is when a group of 6 to 8 people working together figures out what it is for them, their knowledge. They figure out the knowledge. And I was absolutely fascinated by that. And what blew me away is I had been a student for 15 years. I had been and I've been a teacher for 15 years. I've been a headmaster for 8 years. And no one ever really engaged me in epistemology. And what could be more important if you're in education than figuring out how you know what you know? How do you know what you know? And I'd asked some really good educators, and they would be sort of bored by it. I said, "What's your epistemology?" So that fascinated me, and I think that if I were teaching again, I'd pay much closer attention to helping people ask good questions. I'd pay much greater attention, like Arthur Zions is, to encouraging the other ways of knowing and to understanding that reality is much greater than we thought. I wrote for the Exeter Bulletin a letter of apology to my science students because I said in teaching them science, I had taught them what scientists had discovered, and I paid no attention to how the scientists had discovered, which is often from dreams. Einstein was more muscular, sense of his body, and I just hadn't honored that part of it, and I think that's so significant.
What do you believe to be the biggest challenge now in teaching and educating globally?
Yeah, well, I realize that. I'm really going to be continuing the answer to the question just before. As I say, I went from what's going on in education to what's going on in reality, and I've done a number of activities in that. The most recent one is to be a student of a woman called Ellen Tadd. And Ellen Tadd she has a fascinating life story, but I don't think I'll take the time to tell it. But in any case, as a young woman, she had a series of experiences that validated her abilities to contact intelligences in other dimensions. She actually has guides with which she communicates. And if she were here today, she would look at you and tell you, she would identify who your guides are. We all have guides. She would have who your guides are. And so her cosmology is that we all know that you have the one, the mysterious, the undefinable, and the spirit. And from that, the spirit, being creative and eager to learn more, sparks out individual sparks of spirit. And each, you and me and each one of us, is that spark of spirit. And each spirit has a particular bent. It may be curiosity, it may be love. There are, 6 billion different spirits in the universe, not in the universe, on Earth. God knows how many there are in the universe. And you go through, this is her cosmology, which I believe, go through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime to regain a certain balance that you lost when you were first created. So it's possible, if we were attuned, such as she is, and others, attune to the spirit of the young child, you would know what that spirit is, and you would help that spirit fulfill itself. So that would be a big change in education.
There are said to be 4 different ways of knowing: thinking, feeling, sensing, and imagining. Which of these senses do you feel educators need to focus more on, or which is there too much emphasis put on?
Well, our culture's far and away emphasizes thinking as a way of knowing, and thinking is great. I don't want for a moment to be viewed as knocking thinking. Thinking is good, and we way over relied on thinking, and all the other ways of knowing, which you I know of experience from time to time, need to be recognized as valid. And that involves expanding greatly your understanding of what constitutes reality. I mean, the whole emphasis, I'm very fond of talking about worldview, and worldview answers 2 questions. What do you believe is real, and how do you know what you believe you know? And if you'd asked me that question when I was in high school, I would have said, what are you talking about? Real is real. This chair is real. And how do I know what I know? I know what I read in the books, and people, scientists have figured it out. And I would not have been open to forms of reality. I'm going to share an experience with you. I was at the dentist about 6 months ago, and I had a little filling. And for some reason, I was struck so strongly that the assistant was a young woman who was so involved in helping out, and the dentist was a young man, and they had all this equipment, and they had a little light, and I said, I've never seen one of those before. He says, oh, that's something new that hardens the filling. And then I thought of all the years of training these people have gone through, and all the fancy equipment that was in the room. I said, and I started to think some cultures might think we're crazy to have invested so much time, so much money, so much skill in filling my little filling. And I know why I was thinking that way. I was thinking that way because I've been reading about the Aborigines. And the Aborigines had one technical thing. They had a boomerang, which was a pretty neat technical thing. But they deliberately reduced the number of technical things in their lives because they didn't want to interfere with their capacity to live in dream time. And they knew where each of their family members were. Like if we were Aborigines right now, you'd be aware of where your dad is, your 2 brothers are, your mother is. You'd know where water was to be found. You were tuned into a whole another reality that I'm completely incapable of tuning into. And once I got sort of in that mindset, it was amazing walking through Boston and just seeing how much we've invested in technological things. It's amazing, because we're using one right now.
Did you go through, are there other questions you want me to ask that you haven't?
No, I didn't. They're all good questions.
Okay.
All right.
You've said that you believe shamans will be the heroes and heroines of the future. Why do you believe this?
Uh, why do I believe shamans will be the heroes of the future? That's actually a quote from I read that statement first in a book by Susie Gablick, who wrote a book called The Reenchantment of Art. And when I read it, I said, ha, I believe that. I think they'll be the heroes because they're able to tap into this larger reality that we've so lost the capacity to tap into. There's a friend of mine, Jeremy Narby, who wrote a book, The Cosmic Serpent. And he was a PhD student at Stanford. And he said when he became your age, he said, I was disturbed by the great split between the rich and the poor. I remember that. As a teenager, I was unhappy about that. And but he said, other than that, I certainly didn't have any particular interest in intelligences and other dimensions. But when he got to Stanford and was going for his PhD, that they gave him as a project going to Peru. Now in Peru, they had passed a law making it possible for native people to own the land, to own their land. But of course, you still have to know how to work that law. So he went down to Peru, and that was his main project, was helping the native Indians in Peru gain control over their land. But while he was there, this is a little side story from the main one, but while he was there, he had a bad back from playing tennis. He'd been to the experts in Hartley Street in England, and no one would be able to cure it. And this local Indian said, I'll cure it if you want. This wasn't even a shaman. And he said, you'll feel like a rubber person for a couple of days, but then it'll be gone. So Jeremy figured, why not? So he took this stuff, and he felt like a rubber man for a couple of days, and then his back was all fine. It's been fine ever since. But while he was there, though it wasn't his major project, he got interested in the shamans in ayahuasca, and he took ayahuasca and had the kind of trip you take when you take ayahuasca. You go into other dimensions. I've done that myself, not taking ayahuasca, but through holotropic breath work, which is a natural way of getting the same result. And he was fascinated because the shamans told him about getting information from serpents and from plants. And he first thought they're speaking metaphorically, they don't really get information. But the more he worked with them, the more he studied, he realized that they were, in fact, getting information from plants. And he wrote the book, The Cosmic Serpent, studying the parallel between what goes on in DNA and the serpent. And one of my heroes, I'd say, is a man named Thomas Berry, who's a Catholic brother priest. And he wrote a book called Dream of the Earth, which is a very good book. And at one point he says that if we humans think our challenge is to figure out what's wrong and fix it, we're doomed. And that our real challenge is to learn how to communicate with the earth, communicate with the universe. And I believe that, and I think shamans can do it.
What do you believe is the best way to improve the life of the poor?
It's a nice little question. What's the best way to improve the life of the poor? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very proud to be associated with World Education because as I've talked about their approach, I think they try to pay attention to the resources and the perspectives of the poor, and honor them, and honor what they can bring. And that I don't know any other way to help them from that. I mean, it's really listening. It's based in the belief that every human being has something to offer. And I believe that. And so if you believe that and honor that and bring, as we've said, Tom Key's emphasis on listening, that I think is the best way to help them. It means that we, those of us who have, also have to learn a lot. And it's not, I mean, I'm really talking about working as partners, not, oh, I listen to you and figure out what you need and then I'll give it to you. It's not that, because those of us who have, we have a lot of growing to do too. Because really, if you look at us, if you look at us, I'm a fine one to speak in this place. If you look at us, and given the condition of the earth, we're leading absurd lives in terms of the amount of world resources we use. So we have a lot of learning to do too.
Sneak back over here. Thanks.
In November of 2002, you fasted for 2 weeks to bring attention to many global problems we were facing, and how we need to change our story, which would emphasize our interconnectedness. How did this fast go, and what did you learn, or just kind of?
I have fasted twice for 2 weeks. First time was to call attention to the fact that the Soviet Union was offering to suspend testing and we were paying no attention to it. And the second time was, as you say, was to try and call attention to some of the things we're talking about. And I spent most of the time out in the Boston Garden. I mean, I think it was not particularly effective in calling attention to anything. The first time I fasted, I made a real effort to contact news resources. I got some nice letters. Can't remember. The second time, it sounds like I'm leaving the subject now, but I'm not. It's curious to me, or no, it's, no, okay, curious. At one time we thought we were pretty big shots. We thought that the sun moved around the earth and we were the center of the universe. And since that time we've been diminished and diminished and diminished and diminished. We're now, this huge universe that may be, who knows how many planets. There is, I believe, good evidence that there's life. There's a lot of evidence that there are UFOs. So that you could say that you're a tiny, 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 tiny speck in the universe. So that's been very diminishing. At the same time, scientists just have a different view of how the universe works. And so they see each one of us as co-creating what happens. So in that sense, your role has been expanded. And I believe that. So that so what you do has an impact on the universe. so that I look at my fast as though it did not produce any, quote, overt changes. I think it was a contribution to what's going on in the universe.
Who or what has inspired you the most in your life, and why?
Who or what has inspired me the most? I think one of your other questions was who would give me the best advice, and I said a tree, which is true. I'm very, I look at the trees, and particularly the Boston Garden, as very good friends of mine, and I've spent time with them. I was intrigued to have Ellen Ted actually walking over here to visit me, say that she'd walked through the Boston Garden and had the real sense that a lot of the trees knew me, which was intriguing to me. And that there's a particular beach out there I spent a lot of time with, and that beach constantly tells me to relax, which is good advice for me. As far as fellow human beings are concerned, I think the educator I met most of me is a man named William G. Perry, Jr., who started something called the Bureau of Study Council at Harvard, and he, in lots of ways, modeled the kind of interaction with students that I talked about. I'm a great admirer of the Dalai Lama, and I'm a great admirer of Arthur Zions. And then I'm a great admirer of a lot of people, as a matter of fact.
You've talked a lot about how we need to kind of become more attuned with everything around us. How have you become more connected with the earth and the beings around you? Because you said when you were 18, you'd say, well, this chair is real, and I know it because I know it, and now you have this view. So what has led you, or what have you done to lead to that change?
Well, I do a form of meditation every morning. And I try, as Ellen Tad says, you can go through life as a human being with a human outlook, or you can go through life as a human being with a spirit outlook. And I try to do the latter. That is, that if you really do believe that your spirit in human form, and that your goal in life is to help fulfill your spirit, then I think you live differently than you would otherwise. And having said that, I'd say that I'm not a very good practitioner, and that if I were to stand aside and it's not, and I was trying to think, observe rather than criticize. Observe, I'd say you could do more in enriching the connection that I'm talking about. I mean, I've done a number of things, but you could do more. There's a book called, excuse me, a book called Presence, and it's written by Peter Senge, Jaworski, Flowers, and there's a fourth author. And they have a paragraph in there. They say that our normal view of that you have these experiences, you reflect on the experiences, you change your behavior, and so on. And that, and that works very well if you're not in rapidly changing times. But they put forth the possibility of learning from the future. And they describe how you might do that. And they say that's essential in the times in which we live, that it's not enough to go on past experience. You've got to tune into the future, which is possible. And you can do that in many, many ways. Walking in nature, meditating, yoga, but it's mostly trying to make some space in your life to allow the universe in. I mean, I believe that there's a source of knowledge in the universe, that the universe is wise, that the universe is a huge intelligence learning more about itself, and it's possible to tap into that source of knowledge. But you have to make room for it. You can't, it's not, I think it's fair to say you can't will it. What you can do is like grace, is you can open up to the possibility of receiving it. And you do that often enough and you will receive. But you can't, as I say, control it.
Can you please tell us about world education and its mission?
That's okay. It'll get less funny as you do it over a couple times.
That's right. What do you think is the most important part about world education's mission?
And then just look at him, and maybe you could just begin to answer the question and you can just be listening. So
Okay.
that'll help her edit also.
Okay.
I should begin answering the
Yes,
question.
What do you think is the most important part of world education's mission?
Well, what I have respected for a long time about world education is how they interact with the people they're trying to help. That they really respect the people's perspectives and resources.
Please tell us about Wealthy Fisher and her contributions to world education.
Well, Wealthy Fisher's first contribution is that she's the founder of the organization. I'd say her second major contribution is that she set the philosophy, which is really respecting the people you're trying to help, to find out how they look at the world, and it's not come in as an abstract intellectual level. It's a better answer than I gave before.
We'll use it.
How do you see world education changing in the future, and how do you think it should change?
Well, we live in, as you know, in very challenging economic times, so there's a whole practical set of challenges it faces. And then beyond that,